football owners, and we'll also examine the spike in Kyler Murray hype out in Arizona.
Yeah, and also the heavyweight champ says he doesn't want to be so heavyweight. Yeah, it's a little off brand, but hey man, you gotta let a man be what he wants to be, right?
I suppose.
But we will start with the Clippers, who for now are called the Clippers. But they plan to move into a futuristic new arena in 2025, and they might overhaul the team's aesthetic. New logo, new colors, even a new nickname. We have a once-in-a-lifetime chance to really step our identity up another level, owner Steve Ballmer says. Pablo, how do you feel about the Clippers by another name?
They're still the Clippers, and for me, it's not so much about a name in any of this. It's about the product. The Lakers are the Lakers. There are no lakes anywhere in Los Angeles. They have a history. We're on a show that is called High Noon. It's not noon right now where we are. However, what Steve Ballmer wants to do, it seems, is hit a hard reset on this organization because he has the power to do so and because he has lots of new ambitions. And so if that's part of the plan, I do get it on that basic level.
Yeah, but what's that going to accomplish if they do? Like, the time to watch the Clipperness off of the Clippers was 2014. If you were going to do that when you bought the team and you were getting Donald Sterling out of there. They have reached a point now where Clippers is not associated with being terrible, where Clippers is not associated with being the most embarrassing franchise in the NBA. So they could wind up changing the name and doing something else, but I feel like most of that heavy lifting has been accomplished, especially considering this. They built this team to win a championship really in the course of the next 2 or 3 years. If they win that as the Clippers, you're not changing the name. That's the part that matters here, is about what is going on with the basketball, as you said.
I don't think they can possibly change the name if they win a championship. But then again, I also thought if Kawhi Leonard won a championship in Toronto, maybe he would not go anywhere else. I do feel like this is a team, not the same, but I do feel like this is a team that looks at precedent and says, why do we have to follow that in general? But I do think there's also a danger here, right? A danger in what is the next name going to even be? Because for all of the stink associated historically with the Clippers, Bomani, Clippers right now, it works. It's fine. People get it. Like, I think the focus group experiment might actually lead to something perhaps even more humiliating.
Yeah, but I mean, like, their name has never been a problem. The problem has never been being called the Clippers. The problem, when it was a problem, was that you were the Clippers. You are not the Clippers anymore. Okay. Also worth noting, Steve Ballmer, if you look up his wiki page, his time at Microsoft doesn't have the greatest track record to try to take a business in a whole different direction, right? Just something worth considering here. But no, they've already done the hard work here. And I think that's actually far more amazing than people give the credit for being. Like, we now have a generation of players who grew up and lived long enough with halfway decent Clippers that they don't find it embarrassing to go sign up and play for them. That is a drastic change directly related to Chris Paul and Doc Rivers and Blake Griffin. Like, those three guys changed this game up. You can let this ride. Now, if you want to change that logo that they got right there on the wall, you can go ahead and do that. It's about time for that. Like, that does not really need to be here.
I was going to say, people buy lots of jerseys because of designs, but no one really buys them based on the name. Not really. But up next is a familiar name, Ezekiel Elliott, who's off training in Cabo San Lucas while the Cowboys are at camp. All of which is why Jerry Jones signed Alfred Morris at running back and also weighed in with this.
You don't have to have a rushing champion to win a Super Bowl. But Emmett was the first one to do it. And that's one of the dilemmas at running back, is that the league knows that you can win Super Bowls and not have the Emmitt Smith back there or not have Zeke back there.
Bo, what do you make of what Jera has said and done so far?
What the hell else is he supposed to say? No, really, if Zeke don't get in here, I don't know what we're going to do. That one wasn't an option. It's also what he says there is fairly disingenuous, considering they took him number 4 overall in the draft. Like, this was actually your philosophy on running backs, that you don't take a running back where you did and make that decision before he played it down, that he was going to be the centerpiece of your offense. But look, once we're at the point where we are, you have to justify the fact that you're not going to pay the dude. And once you do that, you say you don't really have to have a rushing champion. Now, Zeke's value is way beyond simply being a rushing champion if he is going to be that. But Jerry's doing what you got to do when you don't want to pay somebody.
Well, in Jerry's defense here, he is right about the larger observation about, do you need a running back to win a Super Bowl? It's just weird here because this is a situation where Jerry Jones doesn't feel, I don't think, like this is personal to him. It's not personal to Ezekiel Elliott in this way. It seems like Jerry Jones is just saying, I know that you are the greatest running back in the league. I don't even think he would object to that notion. It's just that running backs as a category, there's a reason why they're the second lowest paid on average, right above long snapper. That's the reality of the position in 2019, and Jerry's just saying, from the long-term perspective, that's not something I want to invest all of that money into.
Yeah, but he didn't really talk about that, though, on the long-term perspective, right? He talked about it specifically as what a running back can do for you right now, and there is no more disingenuous argument than you can win without insert thing here. You could win with a hobbled Peyton Manning at quarterback. You could win with Trent Dilfer at quarterback. We can go through all kinds of other mediocre cats that have won Super Bowls. Nobody's going to use that as an explanation for why it is that you don't need Aaron Rodgers. Now, of course, the difference is the idea that it's easier to get another decent running back than it is to get another decent quarterback. If all you're asking your running back to do is be decent, go look at what the Cowboys have been without Ezekiel Elliott in the time they've had him versus when they were there. Because if I'm Dak Prescott and I'm Amari Cooper, hey, man, our ability to get our money kind of hinges on you giving him his money, because if he shows up, we perform, and then we get our money. If he does not show up, we don't play as well. There's a wealth of statistics to indicate that about both players. But the more money you give Zeke, the less money you can wind up giving them. Like, it's a complex circle that's in place, but using general running back rules when talking about one of the very special ones, it's not landing with me.
Yeah, I think the context has to be the salary cap, of course, but you're totally right. The long term might be what Jerry actually has ground to stand on, but the short term, everybody needs Zeke if they want to win right now.
All right, let's go to Kyler Murray. It's getting rave reviews from teammates in Cardinals training camp. Larry Fitzgerald said, quote, "I've never seen a quarterback come in so quickly and be able to command an offense. Pablo, Fitz has played with great quarterbacks, going back damn near to Neil Lomax. You buying his praise as the number one overall pick."
He's played with a lot of quarterbacks. This would be his 21st, and the funny thing about that list of 20 quarterbacks is Carson Palmer, Kurt Warner, and then a deep, steep drop-off. And so this, to me, Bomani, sounds like hype. It sounds like training crap propaganda, and I am bullish on him as a talent, on Kyler Murray as a talent, but don't we have to also see about this newfangled system that Cliff Kingsbury is bringing to revolutionize the NFL?
Yeah, I say it's only newfangled in the NFL. It's a pretty old and established system in college at the very least. But when Fitzgerald says that I've never seen somebody come in, command an offense like this, I would hope he could command the offense. It's the one he's been running. Like, it's not like he came in and they're like, yo, we got this brand new thing for you. It's called the air raid. No, they're saying, hey, this is this thing like what you'd been running before, which is a whole part of the reason why we drafted you in the first place, is because you were a perfect fit for this offense. So I believe that he has command of it. What this offense is going to do in the league and what that guy is going to do in the league, those are separate categories, but he is wildly athletic with a cannon arm and an offense that's new to the NFL. At the very least, I expect this to start well, because most of the so-called newfangled offenses start well. Steve Spurrier started off with a bang. Chip Kelly started off with a bang. Early, it's probably going to go well. When we're really going to start seeing the story on this is about week 8 or 9.
And that's when the defenses will start adjusting to you. That's when it turns out that, Kyler Murray can talk to David Johnson. He can align his receivers at the line. You're saying that that's when the nice new car smell begins to wear
off. And this
off.
happens to just about everybody, that if you start off at some level of phenomenon, the thing about him as a quarterback at that height is going to be how they scheme up stuff over the middle. Because what happens with those little guys playing quarterback is they're going to throw a lot of out routes and stuff like that. But what can you do with the middle of the field when you got to do this? Drew Brees, who basically has craned his neck out as far as it'll go and plays on the top of his toes, that's what he's got to do to get that done. That's what we're going to see about Murray.
And I got to say, as someone who's about 5'10" myself, getting on your tiptoes, there's an advantage there, right? Just stretch it all the way out. Make sure that your back's straight. It makes a difference.
Can't relate, buddy. 6'4". Coming up next, is the U.S. women's national team going to get equal pay?
High Noon is brought to you by New York Life. We know that life doesn't fit into any...
Brought to you by Chase.
In case you didn't know that spiders are just like us, this spider apparently has seen itself in a mirror.
Yo, I do this at home, man. This is me. This is absolutely me. Except I'll do like wind-ups. I'll do like Mark Fryer into the mirror 50,000 times. It's fun. Try it sometime. Bomani, we have to talk about this U.S. women's national team story. Because while the world champs await mediation for their gender discrimination lawsuit against U.S. Soccer is refuting the claim that it pays the men more than the women in the first place. A Federation fact sheet touts the women's higher guaranteed pay and their club salaries in the National Women's Soccer League, which is subsidized by U.S. Soccer. A USWNT spokesperson, meanwhile, calls all that accounting a ruse. So, Bo, What do you call that?
Well, the counter argument that the women's soccer team is making, and co-signed by the men, by the way, is basically that the accounting is a little bit funky, that they're not talking about base salary, which is what is important. They're also in talking about the more money being invested in the women's sports, the subsidization of the women's sports league, which is not exactly counting as salary here. But the question is, what's the audience? Like, who are they trying to get this passed? Because if what they were just trying to do was get it out here, we invest as much in women as we do in men, that has been effective, because in order to stop that, you got to go, all right, wait a minute, this is how it breaks down. And once you have to do that with numbers and a public expression of these things, it doesn't really sell. So I feel like they probably did okay with the audience they were seeking, even though it's probably a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, the audience they were seeking, I think, is not actually even in the mainstream at this point. This is the weird thing to me about this fight. It's not the French national team or the German or the Spanish or Brazilian that is the women's national team's foremost opponent. It's U.S. soccer. Throughout this entire run through which they've become the most popular soccer players from America in the world, it's not been their opponents, it's been their own federation. And so their own federation here, has bungled this. Why would they do that, right? They have an analysis that they said is independently audited, which brings you to the complicated numbers that you mentioned. But I want to see an analysis of that analysis that says actually publicizing this ahead of time is actually good for our PR, because that's the thing that this team is really good at, maybe even better at than soccer.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, the person that says, I want to see an analysis of the analysis is not who they are talking to. And they'll be just fine passing that off, because most people are not saying, I want to see an analysis of the analysis, right? They're not going with that one. But it's basic respect stuff. Like, that's all this seems to come down to. As in most things with a wage gap, whether it be by gender, by race, or anything else, it's just a basic level of respect that is not present. And if you don't believe the basic level of respect not present, what's this dude's name right here?
Carlos Cordero, the president.
Yeah, check this out. He's like, watch me make this better.
We believe at U.S. Soccer that all female athletes deserve fair and equitable pay. And finally, but not last, winner of the Golden Boot, the tournament's top scorer, and the Golden Ball, the best player, Megan Rapinoe.
There it is right there.
Yeah.
There's all your respect, baby. There's how it is, right?
Not how you pronounce her name.
Right.
But you cued in on equitable there. Why is that telling
Because
you?
it's not the same thing as equal. Equitable is based on some notion of fairness, and the fairness is being determined by the larger group. Equal, that's the same amount of money. Equitable is what somebody thinks is right, and they seem to think it is right to pay them less. The argument seems to go pretty clearly in the other direction. But the only way that this swings back, somebody gonna have to miss some games. I don't know if the courts don't do it, right? And the courts just might. But if the courts don't do it, somebody gonna have to take the fight to that next level.
I just wonder if U.S. soccer realizes how wildly unpopular their position is. Because on the one hand, I understand if you have a deep analysis that makes you feel like, hey, the word isn't getting out there all the way, sure, point that out. But on the other hand, if the women's soccer team decided to say, we actually deserve more than the men because we are winning our games and we're really good, I think that that would also be very popular. And so what they're getting is neither of those things.
I tell you, I haven't seen the polling, but don't assume that because the position is popular among your friends that it is popular among everybody. That's the same thing that happens with paying athletes. Everybody I know is down with it. The majority of America is not.
It should be.
Coming up next, why Le'Veon Bell apologized to fantasy.
This is what I go through every day.
How you gonna do this?
That is
think I have a
troubling.
crying baby out here. I will show you. It's really just Nico. Nico.
Yo, so
Nico,
here's the thing,
Nico.
though. Since it's
You
just a
are
parrot, I
such
feel
a
like I got the right to tell you,
baby.
make it shut up.
Well,
Like, people tell me you can't do that to them with kids, but you can make your bird shut up.
but we need to put some respect on the parrot community's name. We got that parrot sounding like a baby, all those parrots warning people about drug dealers in like Colombia. Remember that story? That was a big story. Parrots.
I just want the parrot to shut up. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Quote, people need to understand that I came this far being chubby and all that. Imagine how far I could go actually being in good shape and looking good. Said heavyweight champ Andy Ruiz about his plan to get in shape after knocking out Anthony Joshua in June. Pablo Ruiz's rematch with Joshua will be on DAZN before the end of the year. So what do you make of Ruiz's decision to change what's worked for him?
I am heartened by this. I think this is a good decision from the medical perspective. His nutritionist, his doctor must be thrilled to hear this, but his agent must be really worried. Because this is why we love Andy Ruiz, because he has a lot of himself to give. I want that guy. I want the guy who looks like he edited himself into that fight, because I was shocked when I saw it and was tickled by the way this guy looks.
Now you're talking about the medical community. Forget that. That's not a dude who needs to be fighting heavyweights like the world class. It worked out that one time. That does not mean that you need to try that for a second time. That is a man who looked in the mirror and said to himself, man, I got lucky, and I have to be careful if I'm going to come out here and I'm going to do this again. That being said, you are correct. There's something fascinating about Americans, which is while y'all hate fat people, y'all really like it when a fat person does something ironically athletic, like this right here. This is the brand. This is who he is. And if he stops doing this and he becomes somebody that's in good shape, then you go resent him because he's not fat like you. Well, not you, but
Yeah, I've been intermittent fasting. Thank you for recognizing. But in terms of what Andy Ruiz is and what he means to the rest of America, we do love him bigger. We love him bigger. We love Al Roker, Luther Vandross, as you mentioned to me before. There are lots of people who are worse when they decide to slim down purely from the entertainment perspective of others, not for their own well-being.
But again, we don't love them. We objectify them, right? We just like I'd say, your fat is either for us to laugh at or to laugh at while you do something well, even though in the end we are ultimately still laughing at you. But we do like portly people who do incredibly athletic things. That is what we do. My boy Rod, the black guy who tips, check out his podcast. He always makes that point. When he goes to hoop, he's a crossover dribble away from being everybody's friend. That's all it takes. Like if you a chubby basketball player, they really love that.
But just imagine, for instance, if Dan Le Batard decided to lose a bunch of weight. I'm just saying, it'd be a different Dan. I'd love that Dan. I just wouldn't love him to the same proportion because he decided to make things a little better for himself and not for me.
I'd take him just as he was.
Aww.
Sorry, it's not even that sweet. It's just like, yo, Dan, I only like you if you're fat. Man, that man changed my life. Look at this watch. You think I would have got this if it wasn't for Dan?
Can I get a watch?
You could if you stopped being cheap.
Today's number. Cost effective, by the way. 406.
Look at that jacket, cheap.
Because this is a custom suit supply jacket. It's made to measure. How dare you? But 406 is the number of touches Le'Veon Bell led the league with in 2017. But after sitting out all of last season in a contract dispute with the Steelers, Bomani, the man took a moment to apologize to fantasy football owners. Let's show that tweet. So, Bo, does Bell really owe the fantasy community this apology?
Sorta. Does he owe it to him? Of course not. He was out here trying to get his real money. People's out here trying to win little money in their fantasy leagues. However, a point that I've made about the NFL that they need to understand is once you started selling fantasy football, you started selling the league as a block as opposed to selling individual teams. These players now belong to everybody in a way because of the fantasy team. Now, with Le'Veon Bell, think about this for a second. People hate Trent Richardson. Like there's a special hatred when anything comes up with Trent Richardson. And Trent didn't really do anything to anybody. It's not like he played for a team that many people root for. He played for the Browns. Why would people have such a distaste for Trent Richardson? Fantasy football. That's why they'd have such a distaste. And with Le'Veon Bell, people last year had the dilemma. Do I make him my keeper? And if you made him your keeper and you rode him out all year long or you burned a good draft pick on him, chances are you now hate Le'Veon Bell in a way that you probably shouldn't. So maybe an apology is a way to make the nation warm up to him a little bit.
I mean, you mentioned Trent Richardson. Remember Brian Westbrook? Brian Westbrook literally won his team a game by taking that fall before the goal line, and it was very smart, except that it, messed up all these fantasy owners' days. And so when it comes to this apology, will it work in terms of winning over those fantasy owners? Right. Of course it will. They want to hear nothing more than, wow, you're going to touch the ball maybe 400, 500 times a game. But I ask you this, what's the real difference here between fantasy football and gamblers? Because I feel like this is warm and cuddly and NFL approved, but if he was to say, you know what, Las Vegas, gamblers out there, I'm sorry I let you down, I feel like maybe we wouldn't see it the same way.
Yeah, pretty much. In closing, here's some guys who should use these skills to make more money doing something else. Like seriously, how do they have all this time? Check this out here. Or not. Or yes.
Yes.
Here we go. A man turned the golf club kind of inverted, looked like a pitching wedge. Makes that drop. There we go. There was a fan there.
Because that's,
did that.
That's
then
suspicious.
we go there. Boom, boom. Here we go. Hit them steps. Keep going. The record is not over yet.
Wow.
The record is not over yet.
Yo.
Still going, still going, still going. There we go. Like, yo, this is really, really, really impressive.
It is.
Here's the thing I'm saying about this, though. I'm looking at that neighborhood. I'm looking at the age on those dudes. Which one of y'all's mama's house is this? Why do you still live there? Because I feel like if you've got all these talents and this understanding of physics and everything else, you should be somewhere being a civil engineer. Instead, you're like, damn, I forgot to take the chicken out the freezer. Mama gonna be home in an hour.
As someone who grew up playing the game Mousetrap, did you ever play Mousetrap?
Yeah, once or
You
twice.
set up the whole thing. That's what this is. The internet has found a way to monetize potential Mousetrap engineers. And for me, in an age when like computer editing's real easy, there's something quaint and lovely about kids being sincere about this whole project.
What do you mean kids? Look at those people. Those aren't children.
Oh, yeah, no. It's a good point. Anyway, in closing, I have a very serious take on LeBron's parenting that I feel like America really needs to hear right now. Just kidding. Check out this tree.
Well played.
So we're in Spain, Bo.